Bragg.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak about the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Australia because I believe Australians have a right to know what is driving people in our public affairs. Like many Australian families, my family served in World War II against the Nazis. One grandfather served in the Western Desert in the Middle East. The other one served in the Merchant Navy on the Atlantic in oil tankers under siege from U-boats. I studied genocide at university. I learned about it here in Canberra at the ANU. I was taught by Professor Colin Tatz. I've been to the death camps in Germany, including Dachau. I've been to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. World War II and the Nazi atrocity has been part of my education. It has been part of the awareness of my being. I am worried that we are starting to forget. I believe anti-Semitism is a rising problem in New South Wales and across Australia. Anti-Semitic incidents have increased by 60% in the past year. There has been extraordinarily large increases on email threats, telephone-based threats and vandalism. In New South Wales, there have been swastikas affixed to Bondi Beach's graffiti wall. Bondi Beach, where many thousands of Jewish people live, including many Holocaust survivors. My friend and colleague, Julian Leeser MP, the member for Barara, has been forced to endure anti-Semitic behaviour in his own electorate. During the last campaign, Mr Leeser had to deal with swastikas and Hitler moustaches, as well as dollar signs for eyes. As he says himself, and I quote, "For the third time, my campaign materials have been attacked by people trying to intimidate me by sending a message of hate." Swastikas and Hitler moustaches were drawn on my posters on a street in Normanhurst. He goes on to say the dollar signs refer to an old anti-Semitic lie of an international Jewish banking conspiracy. The Jews have control of the world's money. These sentiments were used by the Nazis and others who sought to spread hatred of Jews for centuries. I believe anti-Semitism is also underpinning a disgraceful challenge against the Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's citizenship. His mother, Erika Strauss, fled the Holocaust and arrived in Australia from Hungary in 1950. There are 3 people involved with this outrageous attempt. One is Michael Steindl. Paul Karp reported in The Guardian on 31 July that Steindl launched a citizenship challenge under Section 44 of the Constitution aimed at establishing whether Josh Frydenberg had inherited Hungarian citizenship through his mother. The Australian then reported on 7 August that Michael Steindl is a climate activist who supports GetUp. The Australian further reported in late July that Mr Steindl has been involved in climate change protests and led a Stop Adani event in 2017. Let me turn to Trevor Poulton. The challenge is supported by Trevor Poulton, who Jeff Chambers of The Australian reported on 8 August 2019 that Poulton was working with Oliver Yates's Kooyong Independence Group to test the Treasurer's eligibility. On 16 July, Rosie Lewis of The Australian covered Poulton's activities. Poulton admitted to being engaged with Kooyong Independence Group on the Treasurer's citizenship status. Poulton told The Australian he believes the Treasurer is a dual citizen and, quote, "the focus should be on Frydenberg," end quote. Poulton is the author of a book called The Holocaust Denier, which is about a police officer who, quote, "begins to question the nature and the extent of the Jewish Holocaust," end quote. Any reading of his 2014 submission on Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act makes clear this man believes the Holocaust is overdone in Australian schools and that there has been a vast conspiracy to overblow the Holocaust. He rejects the established 6 million dead Jews figure from the Second War, and he goes on to say, and I quote, "It would appear through the teaching of the Holocaust in Australian schools, non-Jewish school children, particularly those of Northern European descent and Muslims, are potentially being encouraged to loathe their own ethnicity." End quote. Putin said these amendments on 18C could, quote, "liberate the debate on the Holocaust in the public domain." And he's gone on to say that the debate on the Holocaust was, quote unquote, the Holocaust narrative. This takes me to the third person, Oliver Yates. Yates ran against the Treasurer in Kooyong as an independent and received 8% of the votes. Post-election, Yates emailed the members of the Kooyong Independence Group. The email of 14 June 2019 says, quote, "It appears many candidates in the last election failed to provide enough information on their Section 44 disclosures. If thought appropriate, they will recommend candidates for referral to the High Court. This has started in Kooyong." Yates says he is not involved in this Section 44 challenge. Yet on 31 July, Mr Yates told the Australian, quote, he knew Steindl, end quote. This is the third limb of clear evidence that this man is organising resources on the eligibility of the Treasurer, which include 3 points. 1. Putin's statement to the Australian of 16 July. 2. Yates's email of 14 June. And 3. Yates's statement to the Australian on 31 July. Yates is involved in this outrage, if not at the nerve centre. Steindl, Putin and Yates should all be ashamed of themselves for their appalling behaviour. They are banding together in the shadows to try and unseat the son of a Holocaust survivor. They are pretending that they are not working together when they clearly are. The basis for this challenge is anti-Semitism. We are proud of Jewish Australians. They have risen to the highest offices in the land. We are proud of Josh Frydenberg. He is a great Australian and a great friend who is well regarded across this parliament. The Liberals will always call out racism. We worked with the Labor Party to open Australia after World War II. We dismantled the White Australia policy together. I call on our education sector to keep teaching the truth about the Holocaust. We cannot afford to forget. What begins with the Jews never ends with the Jews. Finally, I call on all Australia's community and political leaders to never walk past anti-Semitism or racism in any form. Racism is a sickness of the heart and the mind. It should never be tolerated. This is an illegitimate challenge to the Treasurer's citizenship by people who have an obsession with the Holocaust. I thank the Senate for the opportunity to speak out and call this outrage what it is: rank anti-Semitism.
Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. And I